Well, I mean, first and foremost, $400 million underfunding the foundation formula. But aside from that, I think that what was done to Mizzou obviously is cause for concern. Clearly the House has taken a position that we are going to punish students when we disagree with them. We're going to punish the university over the actions of a student. So we've gone from being able to do something about racism that exists on a campus to punishing those students for demonstrating about racial inequity.
And Speaker Richard just talked about that in his post-game Avail, that I think his comment was there's no reason that those cuts should hurt students. How do you just mentioned that they will. I mean, how do you answer his answer that, well, there's no reason they should?
It's a public university. We're cutting funds from a public university. Of course, it will hurt students.
You can't just be limited to the administration. I think that's what he's trying to say.
I think cutting the administration in some way, shape, or form affects the education outcomes of the students. I mean, to say that if you take funds away from Mizzou in an effort to cut administration, the administration is there for a reason. You're going to have some type of loss of educational outcome based on that.
And I wanted to ask you too, the money that was cut out of, was 2011 that Ross's cuts came out of, that he said were targeted to abortion, and was it ever clear, did any of that money actually go? How was it even tied to abortion in the first place? Was it?
The appropriation staff actually had provided a list of things, but when I looked at that list, it appears that there are a number of things in that list that have absolutely nothing to do with abortion. Cervical exams, HPV virus vaccinations, birth control pills. There's a number of things in there that did not have anything at all to do with abortions.
Is that saying that there's some that did have something to do with abortion?
There was some things that did, but I have a Planned Parenthood in my district. That Planned Parenthood doesn't do abortions. So defunding Planned Parenthood is going to hurt people in my community. There was a suggestion where they should go someplace else. So now we want to dictate where someone can go to get their health care. And I don't think that's what we should be doing.
And I haven't looked at the numbers, but it's often said, well, no money in Missouri goes to abortion. So I'm trying. What is the connection to abortion at all for any of that money? What was the relationship?
It's a relatively small amount, and I didn't have the details to be able to say. It was just a list of things, and so if you want to say you can see the word abortion in the list, and it was some service related to abortion, perhaps, but it was a very small amount, and abortions are legal, and we have to recognize that. So it wasn't like we were talking millions and millions and millions of dollars.
In talking to the Representative Ross referenced the fact that this is the amount of money that I need to cut out of this because a staff member told me this is what's being used for abortion. In our conversations with that staff member, he characterized that at best that the representative was misrepresenting what he said.
The budget going to the Senate now, and before I even get to that, have either of you been in contact with some of the Senate Democrats about the last few days and what the next few days and weeks are going to be like over there? Are they going to let anything move?
I have not spoken to them since what has happened. However, and nor did I want to today. Yesterday, I think we wanted everybody to get a little sleep, and today seems to be, from my perspective, an indication of what's to come. And so we haven't had those discussions with them yet. We're going to let them try to sort out what their plan is, and we'll touch base with them hopefully either tomorrow or over the weekend and see what their plans are.
I mean, obviously things work differently over here, but to the extent that you can, will Democrats in the House try and slow things down over here as well because of what happened over there?
I don't know if we need to. If one body's not going to pass any bills, what's the point? I mean, certainly I think we can all agree that, and if you're listening to the debate that's going on in the Senate right now, I think the Republicans have agreed that the Senate seems to have broken down from a standpoint of how it's supposed to operate and the quorum that's supposed to be used in that chamber. And I think it's a shame that the majority party members have to point out the breakdown of the rules of the Senate.
What are your thoughts on the timing of that previous question in the middle of the session before the budget even gets over there? Was that the right decision?
I would say absolutely not, but I mean, personally, I don't think there's any time that they should shut down debate over in the Senate. The Senate is there for a reason. I don't like the PQ being moved on my members over here, but I certainly understand the difference between the two bodies, and at least having one body that is supposed to be deliberative and mindful of what is actually in legislation and get to an outcome that everyone can agree on. To go ahead and cut debate off on that is, I think, on a bill like this is, at the very best, short-sighted.
Assuming that some work begins then on the budget on the other end of the building, what are the things that you go to Senate Democrats and say these are the things that need to be changed on this end?
Well, probably my biggest concern in budget is the surplus revenue fund that, first of all, we haven't even passed the legislation for. There is in excess of $80 million that are Medicaid-related items. And where is that going? Those are items we have to pay. Are we going to cost the state more money, either in loss of federal funds or as a result of penalties from the feds because we've done this? And so I think, first of all, that needs to be reconsidered first and foremost.
You were on the budget committee in 2014, right?
Mm-hmm.
When Rich Dream came up with that. Did you have a problem with it at the time? Is it being used the same way now as it was then in your mind?
I don't believe we put things that were nearly as critical in it, and ultimately I don't think it actually even got used. We didn't have enough revenue for anything to actually go into that fund. It's not that that fund necessarily is a bad idea, but when you put things that we have an obligation to pay in that fund, then that's where we run into a problem.
And this fund doesn't exist currently. It sunsetted at the end of last year.
Right.
So, we're basing this budget on a statute that no longer exists, and what we were told is, there's a bill being filed. Well, the bill was in the budget chairman's committee. If he thought it was that important, why didn't he pass that first before he passed his budget out of his committee? So it seems to be just political theater, and I would bet that the Senate does something perhaps a little different.